Nathan in Ontario, Canada asks, people like Nigel Farage advocate Greece exiting the euro, going back to the drachma, and devaluing the currency to get away from the economic prison of the euro. Is Nigel's idea opposite to Austrian economics, or does he have the right solution? Which is worse for private enterprise, extreme austerity or a devalued currency?
Well, devaluing their currency and returning to the drachma is not going to be a panacea. A lot of it would depend on what the Greek government did once it left the Eurozone. If it simply printed drachma to continue to fund a bloated social welfare state, I think that it would be even worse for Greece if they left the Eurozone. Now, if they left the Eurozone, went back to their own currency and pegged it to gold and were responsible and simply got out from under all the debt that they now owe, but at the same time they implemented sweeping free market reforms, slashed government payrolls, reduced a lot of regulations, then they would be much better off. But then again, if they were willing to do that, they would be able to do it right now within the framework of the Eurozone. The problem is Greek politicians don't want to do any of that. They're looking for a way to stay in the Eurozone and make Europeans, or particularly the Germans, subsidize their welfare state. And I think that would be a big mistake for Europe in general to do that, but that is the outcome that Greece wants. I mean, the Greek politicians don't want to do the right thing. Ultimately, what might be a better thing would be for Greece to stay in the Eurozone, but default on its debts and be unable to borrow money and then be forced to slash government spending. And there might be a better chance of accomplishing that if they stay in the Eurozone, although I do believe that the debts that were incurred by the Greek government are simply too much for the Greek taxpayers to be able to handle. And I think the perception that the bailouts are to help European banks is something that makes that bitter-tasting medicine that much harder for the Greek electorate to swallow.
Carl in Okinawa, Japan asks, does Carat matter when investing in gold?
Yeah, well, if you're going to buy gold coins, I mean, you're buying pure gold, and so it's not like you're buying jewelry where you got to look at, is this 14 karat gold or 24 karat gold? If you're buying Cougarans or maple leafs, they're not going to be talking about the carats. What they're going to be talking about is the actual weight of the gold. You have a 1 ounce coin, you have a quarter ounce coin, a half ounce coin. So the real thing when it comes to gold coins is just not to get burned into numismatics or proof sets or collectibles. Good advice that I can give you now is to go to my website, goldscams.com, just one word, goldscams.com, and then download my free report. It'll give you the do's and don'ts of gold investing, and most importantly, it will tell you what to look out for. And of course, you can always give my brokers at Euro-Pacific Precious Metals a phone call. Check them out online at europacmetals.com.
Tom in Shanghai asks, I've been researching what led to the global financial crisis in 2007. Alan Greenspan popped up a lot, and he is believed to be a libertarian influenced by Ayn Rand, whom I aspire after. Could you please enlighten me as to why Alan Greenspan is to take the blame for the GFC if the notions of the invisible hand and self-regulated all were to be held as true? Is he different from other libertarian economics, such as Milton Friedman or Ludwig Von Mises?
Yeah, well, Alan Greenspan was a part of Ayn Rand's inner circle, and he was a devotee. In fact, he penned an excellent article, Gold and Economic Freedom, which is part of Ayn Rand's book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. It's an essay that Alan Greenspan wrote back in 1966. I often quote from it. But that Alan Greenspan is not the same guy who chaired the Federal Reserve for so long. He certainly proves Lord Acton's axiom that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think Alan Greenspan was corrupted by the power of the Fed chairmanship, and he certainly didn't run the Fed the way a devotee of Ayn Rand would have, and he certainly didn't run it the way his younger self would have. In fact, I could find no better critic of Alan Greenspan than Alan Greenspan. Because if you looked at Alan Greenspan in the 1960s, 1970s, that Alan Greenspan would be very critical of the Alan Greenspan from the 1980s and the 1990s. So I think he's his own best or worst critic. Alan Greenspan abandoned all of those principles. It was because he did all the things that he correctly pointed out the Fed did wrong in the 1920s when they were too loose with monetary policy. They kept interest rates too low. It inflated a bubble in the stock market and the real estate market. Alan Greenspan did exactly the same thing. So he was an enabler of big government, of deficit spending. He was a big printer. He kept interest rates too low. He basically tried to convince people that we didn't need a gold standard anymore because we had Alan Greenspan, and that we were supposed to put our trust in him and his integrity instead of gold. Well, we trusted him, and look what happened. I mean, I never trusted him, but a lot of people did, and I think his legacy is a disaster. And unfortunately, because of his former ties with free market capitalism, Ayn Rand, libertarianism, people now think that, well, maybe we had a financial crisis because he was too much of an advocate of the free market, and therefore it hampered his regulation. And if he wasn't as free market oriented, we would have had a more proactive Fed. There would have been more rules and regulations, and therefore we wouldn't have had a financial crisis. For that reason, he did an extreme disservice to free market capitalism, to Ayn Rand, because he didn't practice what he used to preach. And he's given capitalism or free market economics a bad name because people might associate it with him, but it's only the younger Alan Greenspan. The Fed chairman, Alan Greenspan, was a statist. He was everything that he used to oppose. And the reason we had a financial crisis wasn't because he stuck to his free market, Ayn Randian roots, but it was because he abandoned every principle that he used to stand for.
Matus in Poland asks, our economy 22 years ago was centrally planned. Now it's called a market economy, but it's overregulated, highly taxed, VAT at 23%, gasoline taxes at 48%. There's so much socialism. There is so much socialism, higher education, healthcare, etc. But we were the only country in Europe that has not been in recession during the meltdown. Is Poland, in your opinion, a good place to invest money as a businessman or a stockbroker?
Just shows you how bad everything is, that a country with that much government can be doing better than most other European countries. But yeah, I agree that there is opportunity in Poland. We do have some investments there through some of the funds that we control, and we don't have a lot of money in Eastern Europe. So the fact that we have any money in Poland obviously suggests to me that I see reasons to be optimistic. But you are absolutely right. There has been a lot of progress made in Poland, but there's room for a lot more. Government is still much too big and much too involved in the economy. It spends too much, it taxes too much, and regulates too much. And the pendulum needs to continue to swing towards freedom and free markets and individual liberty, and away from centrally planned, communist country that it used to be. And the good news is it is moving in the right direction. It's just not moving as rapidly as a lot of people would like. But hopefully, being in Poland, you can be a part of the revolution that continues to move that needle in the right direction. And, I was down there before I went to Poland a couple of years ago. I spoke at an economic conference there. There were a lot of free market-oriented people, young people there who knew me, who were very responsive to the message that I had. So there's reason to be optimism. There's a lot of work still to be done there, and I wish the Polish people luck. Some of my ancestors, great grandparents lived there, and I would hope that you will be successful in bringing more freedom and more free markets to Poland.
Mim in Downers Grove, Illinois asks, to obtain the unemployment figure, the BLS calls 60,000 households to randomly collect this information. Since almost no one under the age of 45 has a landline and cell phone numbers aren't published, who in the heck are they calling for this data? This method of collection may have been valid 8 to 10 years ago, but do you think this could be given skewed? This method of collection, one more time. This method of collection may have been valid 8 to 10 years ago, but do you think this could be giving skewed data?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happens with polling. I mean, if you're polling people and you're calling and you're just calling landlines, and yes, I realize that a lot of younger people only have a cell phone, and so they slip through a lot of the polls that are concentrating on landlines. I don't know if there's a way that they can factor that into their sampling and try to make sure that they're getting the right demographic. They might do that, and so they might just have to make more calls before they find, to get the right number of younger people with landlines. I don't know how much of a difference there might be between the people that opt to have no landline at all and the people who just have a cell phone. But you're always right to view some of the polls with some degree of skepticism, especially if they're conducted by the government, because oftentimes there is an agenda behind the poll, and they might find some way to skew the polling, the process, the questions, the methodology in order to produce a desired effect for political reasons.